Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ. Thank you very much for joining me on this pretty excellent Future Friday. For those who do not know, we go live Monday through Friday, and we do about an hour just live talking, comments, maybe, like below, maybe just maybe your comment will be part of the show. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Now, for those who do not know, if you're new to the show, this show takes place live 6 a.m. Eastern time, my time, and it's on 3 platforms, Twitch, YouTube, and our own Discord server. If you join our Discord server by dropping down to the information below, just slide down to the left, you'll see the boiler room, and that's where all the cool kids get to hang out. Now, Future Friday is reserved for, futurism, science fiction, and everything. Now, majority of the time, we will be talking about like altered carbon and the Eclipse phase and the Expanse and science fiction of that caliber, but it pretty much applies to anything in the future. And this week, we've been talking about war. Yeah, war. But I wanted to start this off by highlighting a comment or two that came in over the interwebs from yesterday that kind of applies for today as we segue into today. There was we brought up the idea yesterday about the Christmas truce. For those who don't know, that during World War I, there was a period of time during, I believe there was estimated upwards of 60 million people died in World War I, but there was one particular day that the enemies on both sides came together and they had a Christmas day. It was called the Christmas truce. Anyway, someone, Theodore Minnick, says, the Christmas truce is my favorite story of World War I, too. The war almost ended there. Just think how much the world would have changed if it had. And absolutely. Events like that, I think, happen more often than we realize. But it is very difficult to highlight them because they're probably very small. And I don't mean necessarily the specific duplication of the Christmas truce, but I'm just saying, like, the laying down of arms and the compassion that normally wouldn't be seen when we as armchair historians and role players, gaming enthusiasts, think of them. So yeah, that's basically what I'm thinking of. Like, I bet it happens a little bit more often than we realize. We just never hear about it. And then, but let's go into this comment by M. Krawick. Says, seems to me that war makes every environment impossible to know. So you're constantly exploring it. And yesterday was third pillar of exploration Thursday, and we were talking about a wartime environment. He goes on to say, who was it in that building yesterday? Or our side? Theirs? Are there traps in there? Whose? As in, whose traps? Do we know anyone who might know? Was the building safe yesterday? Is it today? Is it even still there? If it was destroyed, is it just a pile of rubble? A pit with useful stuff buried in it? A new entrance to the Undercity? Same goes for every stand of trees or cave or marsh out in nature. And I absolutely love it because there's this idea that I know all of you have seen in, say, mass media or something, where you have your protagonists, your troops, you're moving through some place and they'll drop the sound out. So instead of hearing like explosions and gunfire and stuff, you have the complete opposite, where you just hear the creaking of wood and maybe insects chirping in the background, or a bird or something, and then all of a sudden, like, maybe there might be scents or smell, and having to, maybe 2 days hence, it was a thriving city. Now you go back and it's burned out and there's barely anybody there. And, in the distance, scurrying in dark shadows are not just like rats, but there's people who are might not be far removed from those said shadowy creatures, right? Dodging and moving and closing doors when they see troops go by and things of that nature. And yeah, not being able to predict what a place is. Basically, war is nothing but exploration in many ways, going into any environment to explore it, to find out where the tactically and strategically where the best places to, to lay in wait or uh, build a uh, build a makeshift landing strip or send up a flare or anything like that. So going into futurism, there's a number of things in futurism where I think it was super changed the battlefield, but we definitely most definitely have to talk about Warhammer 40K. Now I understand that there are already games like Warhammer 40K that are literally built around future war. Absolutely, positively, completely understand it. But I think you could still use those elements in a um, smaller scenario in your science fiction. Like, for example, since I tend to talk about our own solar system, there might be a protracted war, let's say, on the southern hemisphere of Mars. So it might be restricted to a small area, but as from the point of view of the player characters, it might be something that ranges very, very large. So that's always a possibility where you have like a battle in the atmosphere of a planet or a battle over a particular habitat or something like that. And it might be more than just a running gun battle between the PCs and a couple of similarly armed and skilled adversaries. It might be that the player characters are on a dome city, on the icy surface of Europa, and some corporation drops, 500 armored troopers down onto the planet's surface. And for all intents and purposes, it's not a matter of how many people are dropped. It might just be their capabilities because, in the future, one soldier in a mech or one soldier who's got control over 20 drones plus, the ability to call down orbital strikes and all that kind of stuff, they might be their own army unto themselves. So there's always something to pull in for that. Now, depending on how you want to incorporate a war, or even I guess maybe we're talking skirmish, but to incorporate a war in your science fiction is based on where do you want your player characters to be, right? For example, the player characters might not have a vested interest in any side of a war. An example would be in the television show, as depicted in a television show of Eclipse, of the television show The Expanse. The Martian Space Marines were doing battle with an alien mutation when they mutated human beings using a proto-molecule, right? There was a bit of a running battle, and I believe it was on Callista. Wow, I don't remember, but anyway, there was a bit of a battle there, and then it actually turned into like a little bit of a triangle too, because the alien mutated people, proto-moleculians, were attacking both sides of a societal fight between Mars and some other corporations or things like that. Well, Packard, the storyteller, says, "Man, y'all getting into my favorite topic, war. Oh, heck yeah!" So, sure, we can start out with the player characters not having any investment in a battle, and the mission is to drop into something that, like a meat grinder, they don't want to be part of, and so they could be viewed as an enemy on both sides of a huge conflict, and because this is the future. War takes on quite a bit of a different element. I mean, in our own modern context, we have drones and pilots who could be upwards of thousands of miles and or kilometers away from their targets. So, drones and AI and machines that are programmed to do a particular thing could also be in it. And like James Lindell brings up Starship Troopers. Starship Troopers is a perfect example of, fighting. Got to go kill those bugs. they dropped an asteroid on Buenos Aires. We got to go kill the bugs, right? While we have a intergender shower with each other, right? It's like it's those kind of things where it doesn't necessarily need to be a battle against one human being to another. And in science fiction, especially like transhumanist science fiction, who's to say that the troops you're fighting aren't you get one special forces soldier, copy their brain 30 times, put them into various mechanical and synthetic and or biological bodies, and now you're doing battle with a thing with a hive-minded troops or something on the surface of an asteroid. And then of course, me, I love strange and unique locations. Everything doesn't need to be on a Martian-like battlefield, right? It could be in zero G, or on the skin of a starship. It could be, it could be a protracted battle while everyone's trying to run for cover and or escape a habitat that's falling into an atmosphere, or the gravity starts to the spin of a spindle habitat gets ready to change. Or can you imagine the horror that would happen in a hollowed out asteroid that's being spun for gravity? And you get that the vision of your horizon curving up into the sky, where you see like rivers, and you can look up above your head, and there might be like clouds, and then all of a sudden you just see the rolling hills and green grass above you. And then imagine a battle inside of one of those things. I mean, we all know that a kinetic kill weapon could probably punch a hole through something like that. And then you have to say to yourself, well, if you could drop a nuke or a couple of dozen tungsten rods at subliminal speeds into something, like why would that not happen? And like our modern context, where there's it's pretty reasonable why we're not dropping nukes all the time. Atomic weapons were dropped, and we realized like maybe we don't want to do that. Same goes for dropping nukes and rail guns, right? It's that the value of what you're fighting over might be more important, than the complete destruction of the thing. So completely destroying a habitat, actually, like we brought this up before, much like how we love to have our funerals and dumping human bodies out into space, we might not want to do that, because they themselves become kinetic kill weapons. So if you launch a couple of high energy attacks against starships and habitats and things, the debris itself becomes very dangerous. So yeah. Oh, Deadman says the Galilean moons, Callisto, is the outermost of these four. I can't remember from the Expanse whether it was Callisto. It's the first thing that popped in my mind, so I'm going to go with that and pretend like I'm right. But I actually don't remember. But there were, but yeah, I think they were like botanists or something, non-combatants, and they were in the middle of this battle between factions and corporations and whatnot. Which is another thing too, that the classic my country against your country pretty much fades away in science fiction as well. Sorry, I know you guys can hear a kitty in the background, so I apologize for that. Normally she sits beside me and there's never a sound. But in this context, like, you could have major corporations or factions, or heck, even isolationists who are preparing for war. In the Eclipse phase world, of course, there's the Jovians. If any of you understand the Jovians, they are bioconservatives. They are or cyber conservatives, even techno conservatives. Anyway, they don't believe in using technology to modify the mind and the body and the brain and copying your backup brain and all that kind of stuff, having cortical stacks. So in many ways, they don't believe in that, but they've been preparing for a war this entire time. Who's to say that there aren't one or more of these isolationists that feel, for good or whether reasonable or not, that they're preparing for a battle? And with automation, micro factories, and nano fabbing, you know, you could take, more likely than not, you can take your mineral rich asteroid, drop a couple of 3D printers on it, and let them go to work building, weaponry and mechanical things for yourself. An AI building its own AI is probably a possibility, even if it's been outlawed that some places might do that. Now, unfortunately, this is a fact of war that player characters might not be down for, and that's an asymmetrical type of war, in the sense that it makes sense that there are going to be conflicts the player characters just will not win. Period. Right? If you're playing in a science fiction where the players are mech pilots, and there's like 4 mech pilots, and they see 63 other mech pilots across the battlefield, including aerial support and entrenched defenses and things. There's probably going to be times when they're going to be overwhelmed. Definitely a session 0, even if it's been a couple of sessions. Do a session 0.1 and go, okay, guys, listen. This is war. Whatever happened, something happened to something, and there was some kind of illicit thing happened in our game setting. There is going to be a time when you might have to run. You're going to have to hide. You might have to retreat. And so that's just in general. I mean, we talk about that in Dungeons and Dragons. Same thing for science fiction, right? Sci-fi settings, far future settings, there are going to be chances where they might not make it out of there. Now, and so running might be the most important thing. Secondly, if there's a chance it might have been done, it probably already has been done. What I mean by that is, let's take Shadowrun, for example. Okay, you got Shadowrun, you've got magic, you've got hackers, and riggers and all this kind of stuff. In the world of Shadowrun, especially if war is imminent and you have the power and resources of a major corporation or a major government, or someone who's the ultra rich that are trillionaires or quadrillionaires in this future setting, if the players are like, oh, we're badasses, I'm a mage and my partner is a hacker, there's no way they're going to find out who we are. That's not necessarily a truism, right? We know that major corporations hire the best and brightest, at least in their point of view, for security. If they're going to, hey Cam, if they're going to hire, if a player is going to be a hacker, who's to say there aren't 3 other hackers that are in the mesh waiting for someone to try to, hack their communication systems or things like that? Who's to say that the player characters are trying to, they're trying to find their enemy, and they think they have him trapped, and come to find out that it's like surrogates, right? They've been this entire time, when the player characters take down the defenses and they think they have the enemy on the run and surrounded, that they are part of a remote unit or something, and the PCs are like, what do you mean they've been going to war with us and they aren't even here on the planet? And you're like, nope, they've been in an orbital ring this entire time. Why would they be there physically? They don't have to. Like James Lindell says, the best hacker is not put in jail. Oh no, they're hired. Yeah, FBI learned about that pretty quickly, right? Some of your worst criminals, you might need to recruit them to figure out what the heck's going on. Even in a minor sense, what is it? Confidential informants are a thing that's just used in normal communities, right? So someone who is skilled, even if at one point they were your enemy, now they're your friend. So the player characters, what a great way to to make it personal, when the player characters come upon or they have to go against an adversary who knows everything about them, and come to find out it was the enemy has hired a school friend, or an ex lover, or hired a rival that's had it in for you for the past 87 years and has been re-sleeved multiple times. Everything. Yeah. Leaves the Jail says family. Yeah. Siblings, aunts, nieces, cousins, moms and dads. Like, heck, it could in transhumanism, it can get a little bit incestuous, but true, right? Or it could be very awkward, right? If a parent ends up becoming your enemy, and the parent realizes like, oh my, it's my kid, and I've been working against him, and then maybe the parent wants to communicate with them on the side, like, okay, listen, I need you to back down. And, the PC is like, back down, like, what? I'm not doing that. Willow Packer says, what do wars in transhumanist settings get fought over? When no one needs any resources and death is a curable disease, what is the violence about? And I think that's a perfect a perfect question, because, like you said, in transhumanism, we know that death is curable, right? Everyone's got a cortical stack, and unless something artificially, like corporations are artificially making scarcity, someone dies, they have biological death, all you need to do is just take their cortical stack, re-sleeve them into somebody else, it's done. So what are they fighting over? Well, as petty as it seems, I think it might be fighting over status. It could be fighting over FOMO meaning fear of missing out. In other words, fighting over the ability to be the first to do a thing or to be a place, right? It could be, this is strange to say, but the longer your life span is, the greater chance you have of dying. Think about that for a minute. All right. I'll get into it in just a moment, though. Deadman says the fight was on Ganymede. The second ring, talking about the image. The fight was on Ganymede. That's it. Second one in yellow at the start of season 2, and maybe no one needs any resources, just propaganda. That's a possibility as well, too, right? Like, in the setting of Altered Carbon and Eclipse phase, from the outside looking in, it looks like the corporations have created, and the upper class, the meths, and the inner ring have created this thing where it's artificial scarcity, meaning, sure, there's the ability to press a button and give 3D print anything anyone needs, but the artificial part of that is, well, you need to move up in a capitalist society, so you need to work for that ability. But on the complete opposite end of that are the anarchists that live on the outside of the ring and the inner ring, and they're like, oh, we're going to be free and open and anyone can have anything. But are resources really infinite and given to everyone? It depends on what you consider resources, right? Food, basic food, water, shelter, clothing, simple entertainment might not be enough for some people. We know that in a creating artificial equality isn't a thing. People love to strive to get ahead of the people that we have a built-in conflict resolution mechanism that makes it so that some of us want to be in a better position than other people, right? Sometimes it's fighting over attention, like an Instagram influencer. Sometimes it's fighting over talent, as in like music and sports. Sometimes it's fighting over knowledge, like scientists trying to come up with the best idea for something, right? Yeah, like Tesla's talks about no one needs any resources, just could be just propaganda. Maybe the fact that, in a 200-year lifespan, maybe resources are no big deal, but in a 1,000-year lifespan, maybe there are dangers, right? Deadman says in the eclipse phase, you need resources to build things with the Faber in the first place. So where do you get those resources from? Like, on one hand, you might say, well, we're just going to comet farm and go after asteroids, where the belters might be like, you can't just, those, we live there. You're looking at it as resource. Those are our homes, right? It's the, here in the States, it's the conflict of, well, we don't need to buy oil from other countries. We're just going to dig for the oil ourselves. And then the people living over top of the oil are like, sure, but not in my backyard, right? Getting back to the point of the longer you live, the greater chance you have of dying. In our lifespan, we don't think of, say, the sun burning out, gamma rays, bombarding the earth. We don't think of the earth falling into the sun. Yes, there is a chance that we might get bombarded with a large enough interstellar object to destroy all life on Earth, but our lifespans are short enough that we don't really think of it as a possibility. But if you live 1,000 years or 5,000 years or 10,000 years, and your lifespan is that far, then you're probably the mathematical probability that you're going to encounter something that will annihilate you starts going up even higher, much like the Fermi paradox of mathematically there must be alien life out there, because mathematically speaking, we know that the universe can't come down to just one, that there must be life out there, but we can't find it. Same thing about becoming immortal. So it could be, it might not be fighting over resources as in like food, water, shelter, energy, material resources. It might be existential, an existential fight. Moving beyond faith and religion, it might be an existential fight of I don't want my way of life to become destroyed, since it's so easily to get rid of it, if that makes sense. In our own modern context, there are people who are violently opposed to other people's political point of views, simply because they feel that the other side is a threat to their political survival, right? So, and the same goes for faith and religion. The same could go for technological advancements. There are people who will kill simply to keep their research going. So I think in a strange way, I think the reasons for fighting might be smaller. The resources to fight might become bigger. So an example would be, I have beef with my neighbor, so I take a knife and I try to kill my neighbor. Is a very small thing, while devious and dangerous and criminal of me, taking a knife to my neighbor is a dangerous thing, but it's very small. But if I'm able to go home and hack a virus because I don't like the people who are in the neighborhood across from me, and that virus spreads and kills 10,000 people, while I am one person, I have the ability to affect more. So maybe future wars might be caused by fewer participants, but a larger scale, which is pretty scary as well. I mean, someone with enough resources could land on a, 500-kilometer in diameter asteroid, get some fabbers going on that asteroid, and who knows what they might create, some war machines that they might create, and it could come out of the brain of just one individual, or at least a small community of people too. Also, there's the idea of preemptive wars, right? So if you are um, if you feel you're in the right, you might cause a preemptive war because there's other people out there who are doing things like 3D printing viruses in their backyard, or designing killer AI in their basement, or um, some kind of mimetic assassin is stirring up trouble and creating a new um, faction that is in opposition to what you believe in. And so now that new faction itself is out there, and for a fact that these people are propping up everywhere. They're like a terrorist cell or something. So what do? You have a preemptive war, because just in case the other side might be going after your resources, whatever those resources might be. Yeah, she's like, shut up, you scared me. Cameron says, other life might live on things we would consider hazardous or deadly. We might have life in our solar system and not even know about it. You know what? Might even know it. So, yeah, what is it? Fear brings hate, and sometimes fear is lack of knowledge about something. We have fear of people we don't understand. Hey, I don't speak their language and they look different than me. So the fact that I don't know a thing, I'm scared. I'm scared of being scared, and it embarrasses me. So now I hate them. Right? We know that's a truism. So why wouldn't that be something that people hold on to in the future? New alien life forms, of course. While not the specific part of the setting, Eclipse phase and the Expanse and Altered Carbon, while it deals with transhumanism, also deals with alien life. So who's to say that, like in Eclipse phase, there's the factors, and in Altered Carbon, it's the Harlan's world. What are those aliens? I can't remember them, but you get the point, right? Dead Man brings up the Valhalians in Eclipse phase live on a sulfur dioxide or acid and lava covered world called Valhall. Ooh, that's actually kind of cool. And like you said, alien life that lives in a hazardous place. It might be a need to do that, right? To go to war. It could be even a misunderstanding. Sure, having a conversation probably would make most wars end anyway, but misunderstandings are pretty common amongst people, especially if it's something done untowards, right? We land on an alien planet, and we put our flag down, and we're like, wow, we don't see any life. Cool. We're going to move here. And inadvertently, we cause a war because we ended up wiping out their life. Going back to Starship Troopers, or going back to a television show called, is it Space Battle Above and Beyond, or is it Battle Beyond the Stars? Where the whole point of it was, humans wiped out a colony of some kind of alien life. So now the alien life wants to go to war with us. Heck, you could even have an ecological war. We land on Mars. We want to build cities, and the Martians that live there are like, no, you want to terraform the planet? No, you need to terraform yourself and change yourself. We're not having that. Boom, ecological war right there. Yep, Stargate is. Lindell brings up Stargate and the Goa'uld. Yeah, I mean, Space Above and Beyond originally aired on Fox. I believe it was Space Above and Beyond that ended that, where you find out that the war between the aliens and the humans was caused by the humans in the first place, and there was an android in the group, and the show ended on a super dark note with a corporate head activating something in the android's head, and he pulls out his gun and puts a bullet in the back of the heads of all his allies from the entire show, and then destroys himself. I was like, whoa, that's a nasty, great way to end a television show. Sorry, spoilers, but whatever. Yeah, originally planned for 5 seasons, only for the single 95, 96 season due to low ratings. It was nominated. It was a very, very good, like, war behind the trenches war type of show. I kind of like it. Now, Cameron says not knowing can be a comforting thing in a world where people seem to think they know so much. Like our own world, like our own world today, it's very easy to hide behind, to use our technology to prevent ourselves from hearing things that we don't want to hear, right? If I was a flat earther, my search requests on the interwebs would end up giving me only information that confirms my beliefs rather than giving me information that goes counter to that. And listen, we all of us in our internet searches are doing that, whether we know it or not, right? If you are of a particular religion, you're gonna find more things that correspond to your religious beliefs than do not. You're heck, just language wise, I don't speak other languages, so I'm only going to hear things that are going to be in English. And while knowledge can get to me from other sources, that cuts off a significant amount of data that I am able to absorb, whether I want to or not, right? So, yeah, I think there's some comfort in it. And listen, when you're talking transhumanism, you could literally overlay over top of you. We've seen this in Black Mirror, right? You can literally overlay into your vision, your senses, your vision, your hearing, and everything, by turning your enemy into literal monsters because you don't want to see them as human anymore, right? I don't know if you guys saw that Black Mirror or remember that in Black Mirror, where everyone's like, yeah, we're going to fight the enemy. They're like vampires and monsters. Yeah, we're just going to kill them. And then come to find out, you're like, they're not monsters. They're just regular innocent people. And then we've been turned into killing machines to kill them off, right? Also, high technology makes us feel superior, right? Because we know things, we have access to equipment and resources, and man, there's nothing I can't handle. And then dropping the player characters into a place where, let's say, communications are cut off due to, the proverbial nebula radiation, electromagnetic interference, blah blah blah, reflective debris, whatever the case might be, pulsar flares or something, I don't know. So maybe the players are stuck behind, they're like sent on an incomplete mission to a place where they have the inability to communicate back with the people that they need to get the thing done. So we've seen this plenty times in submarine style movies, everything from Crimson Tide to U-571 to Das Boot and all this kind of business, where you have a bounded location, and that bounded location could be a planet, a habitat, an abandoned starship. Heck, that bounded location could be through a Stargate, and here's your mission, and the communications got cut off. Now what do you do? Something else that might limit resources, and we might talk about this next week. We talked about it before, but we didn't make it official since this has become Future Friday, is the idea of 3D printing things, right? Like, sure, you have access to your resources, but how fast do you have them? With Deadman bringing up the fact that in order to even fab something in a 3D printer, you need the raw elements to do it. So it's not a transporter. It's a thing that dismantles materials and chemicals to build the other thing that you want. So maybe the player characters, sure, you have a 3D printer, but you're going to need to go to travel across the planet or use a scanner or Maybe the enemy has, the raw materials to build what you need to build in order to do the thing that you need to do, right? It's like the player characters might have like mechs that have suffered some kind of damage, or maybe they are in a location that is dangerous for them to be in, right? So war has a lot of that we can borrow from. War has a lot of countdown timers too, whether it is nanotech swarms, impending orbital bombardment, uh, some kind of radiation about to sweep across the planet. It could be, a planetary surface that's spinning to the point where so close to the sun that it's a frozen wasteland on one side, but as it spins, kind of like Mercury, it spins towards the sunward side, it becomes a blasted wasteland. Like Deadman brings up the Valholians in Eclipse phase, where there's a sulfur dioxide lava covered planet or something. Maybe a planetary reentry, a falling space elevator, a starship that is ready for impact or passing through a dangerous place. Like, there's a lot of that stuff that you can play with in a war setting, which might make it quite important for the PCs to complete their mission, not based on killing the enemy, but doing it in a particular amount of time, right? If the PCs need to, get into the space elevator, find a particular cortical stack of a particular political enemy or something, or someone that is a scientist or something, and get the hell out of there, that might be more important than killing the 35 security soldiers that are trying to protect this individual, right? Tesla says literally submarine warfare in space, brings up the Balance of Terror episode for Star Trek. The Enterprise battles a Romulan ship suspected of destroying outposts near the neutral zone. Captain James T. Kirk is officiating at a wedding between two crew members, and Angela Martine and others. So that was, let me hit this. So, yeah, I can't do it. Oh man, I'm both scared and frightened if I click that. But yeah, so submarine warfare in space is a common what cinema calls a bottle episode. That's where something happens in a small, sometimes even a single room location, with lots of tension between the actors, but not a lot going on. Like James Odell says, see? Yeah. Thank you there, Teslas. Yeah. I've lost Captain's log, star date 1709.6. We're at the neutral zone. I've lost contact with the intruder. No reaction on our motion sensors, but believe the Romulan vessel to be somewhere close by, with all engines and systems shut down. The Enterprise is also playing this silent waiting game in hope of regaining contact. Yeah, how many times have we seen that? It's the opposite of the blasted, battlefield and gunfire and laser blasts going overhead. It's the we have to be quiet, because if we're loud, one false move and we could get blasted out of wherever we are, right? Like, it's the starship / submarine battle, where everyone knows that the minute you launch your kinetic kill weapons, your enemy is dead, which means translates into, hey, at the minute we're seen, the enemy might strike at us. So now we've got to be quiet, and we have to sneak around, and we've got to do so there's plenty of espionage. There's plenty of exploration in war, even with science fiction. As a matter of fact, sometimes our technology brings us to the point where we are so comforted by it that we embrace it, that it works against us. For example, radar systems that are predictive. Like, I think we brought this up before, where, yeah, my radar system thinks it's another starship, but really it's a space whale, because the radar systems don't understand what space whales are, but it sure does understand what the enemy is. So what the sensors are showing and what you see with your eyes and ears might be two different things. Or, the classic, what do you sense, Geordie? Sorry, Captain, I'm not quite sure. What do you sense, Diana Troy? Um, I'm feeling your emotions, but I'm not quite certain. I'm feeling love yet hate, fear yet joy. I don't know, right? It's the this technological object should be working. Why isn't it working the way it should be? And then everyone looks around like, don't ask me. I don't know what to use. I don't know. And then, of course, you have that one person raise their hand like, we could just actually look with our eyes. And they're like, that's stupid. Humanly evil aliens are most win and then kick. I'm not following you there, Star Fox, but I think I know where you're going. um, also, the a battle, you could set up a scenario where the player characters. Okay, here, an example would be the it's a foregone conclusion that the players may win this battle, right? For whatever reason. But it might be them going on like a fetch quest to establish or connect with something or gather the materials needed to win in the first place. So an example would be like an example is sneaking behind enemy lines to sabotage something to get out of there, right? The sabotage itself might be a foregone conclusion that if you sabotage a thing, okay, they're dead in the water. We're going to attach explosives. An example would be Star Wars. Okay, so Obi-Wan Kenobi's job was to go into the Death Star and attach explosives to destroy the Death Star from within. That was before Luke Skywalker got involved in it. Had to do this thing, right? It was, listen, you're a Jedi. All you got to do is sneak in, attach a couple of things here, sneak back out. No big deal, right? Okay, perfect. Except it didn't work out. So now we already know how to win, but we have to gather the materials, information, circumstances so that we can win. So the player characters might need to use stealth to sneak behind enemy lines. They might need to use interrogation to find out exactly where to put the explosives. They know where to put the explosives, so now it might be a matter of speed or timing to sneak into a place because they have a guard change or something. They sneak inside. They put all the explosives all around the foundation / engines, / explosive chemicals, blah, 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 Stargate, whatever the case might be, antimatter, storage containers, dilithium crystals. All right, PC set all the explosives, foregone conclusion. Now they got to get the heck out of there because whatever sabotage you're going to do is going to destroy half the continent, right? So it might not be the mission itself might not be the win scenario. Instead, the mission might be not the mission, but it's the journey rather than the destination, Star Fox says, in a World War III, and we make magic real to win, which brings up another thing, right? Magic, psionics, alien species capabilities. Those are things that are going to be heavily influenced in a war time, right? I mean, sure, it's cute to have I have mind control, or I have a psychic blast out of my brain or something, or I have telepathic communications. But if you're able to do that against navigators and pilots and other starship captains, or even dogfighting in a battle in spacecraft that are dogfighting in the upper atmosphere of a planet, and not only are you a great pilot, but you can also mentally contact other people that you're fighting and make them see things that aren't there, or affect the transmission of their communications or something, or their interpretation of said thing. That's pretty powerful. And how much fear do we have of the shape-changing alien, the invasion of the body snatchers kind of thing, in a transhumanist world where you can capture someone's cortical stack and, do some psychosurgery and erase part of their memories and then reinsert that person, or grow some biological bodies and kill the original politician and insert your own politician who's loyal to your side of the battle. Maybe just finding spies and people behind your own lines of defenses might be a war in and of itself. I guarantee you there's going to be at least one of your players in like Altered Carbon or Eclipse phase. It's like, well, I'm going to make copies of myself and make myself into my own Black Ops team, right? I'm going to make 5 copies of myself. We're going to be in 5 different types of bodies. We're all going to be like roided out with like cyber tech and biotechnology, and we're going to walk around as a group. How do you stop a thing? How do you role play a thing like that? It's crazy, but the enemy's going to do the same thing. So, now remember, we still have rules for that kind of stuff. You can suffer psychological harm because of doing things like that, copying your brain over and over, sleeving and re-sleeving yourself in the bodies that don't fit for you. Pretty nasty. I could imagine an allied service sending the PCs against the enemy, and then come to find out that the people you're fighting for have made, dozens upon dozens of copies of you and your team, sending them out to different parts to perform similar actions. So there is a copy of you and your entire team in multiple locations everywhere else in the galaxy or something. And you're like, wait a minute, you look like me. And you're like, no, you look like me. Wait, who are you? You're the enemy. You're like, you must be the enemy. And you're like, nope. They sent us through a Stargate, and they were hoping we would never meet each other, but too late. There's so many things you can do with high technology and cortical stacks. As a matter of fact, you could even have a rebellion happen when both sides of a battle are like, both sides of the conflict are doing nothing but going to scavenge or re-sleeve copies of the people who are in the war to send them back out again. And there might be like a forever war trope where it's the same people in war fighting each other over and over and over again, because both sides, all they're doing is just re-sleeving, sending them back out there. Oh, they died. Re-sleeve them, send them back out there again from like old copies. So the new soldier goes into battle not knowing that he's died a dozen times because there's been like a stalemate, and uncovering that might be pretty traumatic for a lot of player characters too. Like, oh, you find a pile of dead bodies. Well, I'm gonna search them for like extra ammo. Well, you accidentally look inside of the space helmet of one of the people, and it looks just like you. And you're like, what the hell? I'm gonna check the other bodies. Well, they all look just like you. Matter of fact, they all look like all of you guys. You're like, what the? But we've been fighting for like 80 years. Yep, and they've been here this entire time. They've been throwing us against this enemy this entire time. What the hell, How about the idea of listen, big asterisks here. Don't do this to your players. But if they're game for it, what happens if there's been a battle that's literally just in a virtual reality, right? Multiple corporations, countries, or whatever, are having a battle in an AI simulation to find out who would win in the first place, so that there's no physical destruction. It's all just artificial. Yeah, like Star Fox is saying, having a D&D world with a war with Terminators. Well, I think it already is. It does. You could already have something that exists like that. In many ways, if you think about it, the Terminator franchise itself is a war, right? It may be asymmetrical, but it's still a war. It's humanity against the machines. So why wouldn't there be something like that? You know, player characters in Eclipse phase are for the most part you can play them as a default setting is playing them as firewall agents, and the reason they're firewall agents is to prevent the coming doom, to prevent an existential destruction of all of humanity. And one of those might be, you know, an AI that wants to wipe out all life. Well, if the AI are on a factory on Ganymede and the PCs have to make sure that the AI doesn't get out of there, and they go, okay, excuse me, shut down all communications, and we need to go into that factory and stop it, that could be a war in and of itself. Fighting on the planetary surface, going down in the caverns. And you know me, I love different locations. Poisonous atmospheres, airless voids, being bombarded by radiation, extreme heat and cold, high gravity, maybe due to a high gravity world or due to constant acceleration. It could be, you know, the core of an engine core exposed, and the PCs are fighting in and around it, and they, you know, they understand, hey, I'm only biological life. My lifespan is gonna end in mere minutes, but I've got to do something and just send a message back and hope they you know, re-sleeve a copy of my my cortical stack and get me spun up so I can jump back in the war again. Which again, in war, especially in like Ultra Carbon Eclipse phase, you know, suicide missions might be a commonality. I understand players tend to default to like, I don't want my player character to die, but suicide missions are probably pretty normal. So again, you know, telling stories in a different manner might be a really cool thing to do in your setting. And lastly, I'll say that the ultimate enemy, which might be kind of cool, would be the player characters themselves. What if a war starts, the PCs end up discovering who is behind this major war? Come to find out, it's been them this entire time, because they know themselves. They end up revealing or finding out information that copies of themselves didn't know. But the the antagonists are like, we needed to start this war because this other, you know, like, no one's listening to us that an alien invasion is about to take place. And so we don't have time to be gentle. We need to take over, you know, everything so we can send all our defenses against this alien invasion that's about to happen. And you know, the PCs are like, we have no idea what you're talking about. And then the copies of themselves are like, oh, we do. And we're going to recruit you because here's the information we have. And then that whole cycle starts all over again, right? They recruit copies of themselves who didn't have the information. And then the PCs are like spun up from old copies. And they're like, you have to go against this enemy again. And they're like, who's the enemy? They know everything that we know. How is that possible? Like, it's been us the whole time. What was going on? Yeah. Lastly, and this is something kind of sick before we get out of here, maybe there's a war because people are bored. Could you imagine a war created by some elite like glitterati or scientists that just want to see if humanity has what it takes to live, or an AI system that's like, the only way for us to evolve. A war is the crucible of evolution. You know, the strongest, most capable will live. So maybe a war starts out of literally a computational error, or a chance to see what would happen with society, or a faction that is intent on, maybe humanity has become so locked in stasis that we have no more challenges, and this faction wants to cause a war simply because humanity needs to grow and needs to expand beyond its horizons, and we need sacrifice. And if it wasn't for the challenges of life and death, maybe we wouldn't have moved into the stars itself. And maybe they believe in that. Maybe they are, their philosophy is overcoming challenges of all types. And that's where our heroes come from, right? A lot of us, heck, me, I brought up Desmond Dawes, the guy who goes into war as a combat medic and refuses to take up arms against his enemy, but saves 80 plus people in war, becomes a hero. How does that person express himself if there is no war? There is no conflict, right? I'm not advocating death and destruction, but there are some people who truly believe that the crucible of war is a test of how far we can go. Star Fox bringing a war that is robot mages versus cyber demons and knights and stuff. Yeah, you could get a little crazy with it as too, especially when you're going into like Warhammer or something like that. But anyway, guys, I want to thank you guys for joining me on this Future Friday. I really appreciate you guys coming in. I'm not sure exactly what next week's subject will be, but I am going to be part of a online convention, so there might be a little bit of pause in our usually weekly format, but whatever. I'll let you guys know ahead of time. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of this. I really appreciate it. I want everyone to have a great weekend. Be safe, and be happy. Everybody take it easy. Thank you very much. Have a great one, and I am out. Thank you so much. Have a great one. Thanks for watching.